Federal election is on Saturday, May 3rd. Pre-poll voting or early voting has started, and we will be featuring at least two candidates. We'll see what the others do on Queer Radio over the next two programs. I'm with Mike Head. We've met Mike before on Queer Radio a couple of times. Mike is standing for the Socialist Equality Party. Mike, welcome back to Queer Radio.
Hi, Blair. Nice to be here again.
Thank you, Mike. I'll just do a quick pronoun check with you. I use he, him, or they, them. Yourself?
Him is fine, yes.
Thank you, Mike. Mike, last time I think we spoke on election matters, particularly you were standing for the Senate in Queensland. This time you're standing in a House of Representatives seat, the famous seat of Oxley, which in past history has had former opposition leader and then Foreign Minister Bill Hayden as its rep, and then the incredibly egregious Pauline Hanson for a brief period, 2 years, which kind of made her star, I suppose, if you call it that. You're standing in Oxley now, but as you've let me know, Oxley then and now is quite a different seat. Why are you standing in a House of Representatives seat this time?
Well, we're standing in several House of Representatives seats in working class areas in order to take our revolutionary socialist program out to the widest possible audience among workers and youth. Oxley is now a working class heartland of Brisbane, covering areas like Inala, Goodna, Redbank Plains. And these are areas, by the way, which have huge workplaces in them now, warehouses, factories, but also terrible social crisis. For example, Inala has an unemployment rate of nearly 12%, which is almost 3 times the national average.
Mike, what are some of the key? Mike, what are some of the key policies that the Socialist Equality Party is presenting to address those key social problems and economic problems?
Well, we're fighting for a socialist agenda, that is, for the working class to take control of society out of the hands of the billionaires and oligarchs who are personified today globally by Donald Trump, Elon Musk, in this country, Gina Rinehart. And we're warning that this system is now plunging humanity toward trade war, economic breakdown, and war. We've said there's a dark cloud hanging over this election, personified by Trump, but he's just the front man of the capitalist class. They want to make America great again. What does that mean? At the expense of the working class in America and globally. So it's a dark cloud, not just over the election, but the entire world. Working class people everywhere, including here, as well as in the US, are having their entire lives and futures thrown into doubt by the descent into trade war, genocide in Gaza, war and dictatorship. Trump is openly seeking to establish by fascistic methods in the United States. And Australia is not an exception to any of this.
Sure. Trump isn't on the ballot in Australia, but by the way you are speaking, you're saying a lot of what he talks about and what he's enacting in America is having an effect in Australia. But I'd like to come back to my earlier question. What are some of the key policies, should you be elected, would you try and enact in the Australian Parliament?
Well, you're not going to get our measures through Parliament in its current structure in any shape or form. But we are talking about, we're a revolutionary party. We're talking about overthrowing the existing state apparatus and establishing democratic workers' control over the world economy. That would mean, for example, nationalise the banks, basic industries under workers' control, expropriate the billionaires like Gina Reinhardt, for example. I mean, by one calculation, she's now worth about $40 billion. If she just put aside $10 billion, or if we took 10 billion from her each year, that would bring all the people on job seeker, youth allowance, above the poverty line. There's currently 920,000 of them in Australia. So the social inequality gap is getting wider and wider. So we have a platform which includes allocating billions to provide free, first-class public health, public education, housing. I mean, there's a housing crisis because the housing market is almost completely privatized, controlled by billionaires like Harry Trugovov and all the rest of them. And because there's no public housing virtually anymore. It's been areas like Inala, which once were built by public housing, that's all gone. So, there's an attempt to blame foreigners, immigrants, international students. That's a complete diversion, and a very filthy one is that, a nationalist one is that. The problem of the world is not immigrants and foreigners, it's the fact that the world economy, like never before, is controlled, monopolized by the oligarchs. And Trump is just the top of the pile of that.
Mike, we've got about 3.5 minutes left of our time together. One of the issues that you raise in your platform is actually an administrative issue that under legislation that both the Australian Labor Party and the Liberal National Party coalition put forward and supported, that has actually denied the Socialist Equality Party's name being on the ballot. So if people in the seat of Oxley wish to vote for you, they'll just see your name. They won't see SEP or Socialist Equality after your name.
Yeah, we disagree with this entire regime, increasingly seeking to keep people off the ballot or keep opposition parties like ours off the ballot. I mean, in 2022, just before the last election, the Coalition and Labor got together to treble the number of members you had to register with the Electoral Commission to be able to have your name, the basic democratic right to have your name on the ballot paper. We went out and we campaigned and got the required 1,500 and more members, lodged it with the Electoral Commission, and they still found they wouldn't register us. They claimed that several people denied being members, but refused to give us the information about who they are. So we can't even verify that. So we've had to stand without our party name. And we had to go out, and of course, to go on the ballot then, you've got to get signatures of more than 100 people in each electorate and pay $2,000, which we're doing. The major parties don't have to do anything like that. They're automatically on the ballot just because they've got members in Parliament. It's nothing democratic about this system really at all.
Mike, for the listeners of Queer Radio, primarily people of diverse and gender and sexuality, what policies do you think speak to them?
Well, we stand in defence of basic democratic rights of all to be free of discrimination. But we also say that those questions of discrimination, inequality can only be overcome on a class basis. The mobilisation of the working class across all gender lines and national lines as well, in a common struggle against the profit system itself. So that's, I think, a very important conception. We stand, for equality in every aspect, but that can't be achieved when you've got an enormous class divide in society, which is widening, not lessening at all.
Mike, it's been a pleasure talking to you again. Thank you so much for being a part of Queer Radio and also part of the election process. As said, you are standing in the lower house seat of Oxley here in Meanjin, Brisbane area. And just quickly, is there an SEP slate of candidates for the Senate?
Not this year in Queensland. There is in Victoria and New South Wales, but not this year in Queensland. We're focusing quite concentrating on one of the main working class areas of Brisbane, quite deliberately. That's the Oxley electorate.
Mike Head, Socialist Equality Party candidate for the House of Representatives, District of Oxley, at the federal election on Saturday, May 3rd.
Authorised by Cheryl Crisp for the Socialist Equality Party, Level 1/457 to 459 Elizabeth Street, Surrey Hills, New South Wales, 2010, Australia.